Thank you and good evening. Welcome to the Economic Development Committee, Monday the 7th of June. Do you have any apologies for absence?
Chairman, I just have a few housekeeping rules I need to read first, please.
Please do.
Good evening. Thank you to all of those attending the Economic Development Committee this evening and to those who are watching this meeting live via our YouTube channel. To those who are present with us this evening, I would just like to run through some brief housekeeping rules with you. Please could we ask you to use hand sanitizer when entering and exiting the room this evening. You will find hand sanitizers located within the room should you require to use this during the meeting. We ask that face coverings are worn when moving around the room and are only removed when you are seated or standing to talk on an item. Please also remember to follow the social distancing guidelines in place. We are operating a one-way system in the room this evening and you will see signs on the doors to assist you. We are not expecting any test fire drills this evening. If you should hear a fire alarm, please make your way out of the room and down the stairs where officers will assist you to the evacuation location, which is across the road outside the Star Hotel. Anybody requiring help in the event of an evacuation, please make yourself known and the relevant assistance will be provided. Please could I ask that all mobile phones are either switched off or put onto silent mode. Members, I will remind you that should you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait for myself or the chairman to acknowledge you, and your name will be added to those wishing to speak. When called to speak, you will be required to press the button on your microphone in front of you, which will turn red when active. Please can we ask that you speak both loudly and clearly into the microphone so that those watching live can hear you. When voting this evening, members, this will be undertaken by a show of hands. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Back to the agenda. Any apologies for absence?
I've received apologies from Councillor Hammond and Councillor Anderson is subbing for him this
Lovely,
evening.
thank you. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Ackerback?
I'm not sure if it's a full declaration or not. I know Kickstarter is on the thing, and as a business I employ a Kickstarter, but I don't know if that relates. But
we have item 3 is the minutes, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of March, and you'll find them on pages 4 to 9. I'll go through those for accuracy. Stop me if it needs any change. Page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, and page 9. Are you happy to sign those as an accurate record? I'm not seeing any dissent, so that's okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Good. Item 4 on the agenda is the forward plan. That's on page 10. We have any comments on the forward plan? Nope, not seeing any. So we take the forward plan as read. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is the business engagement plan, which you'll find on page 11. Is Michelle here?
Yeah. Hi.
Sorry, Michelle, didn't see you over there. My apologies.
Fine. Thank you. I'm hopeful you can hear me. I'll move this slightly closer. This is a cover paper that both Tori and I have worked on, and the annex is something that Tori will lead as we move forward. I'll just do a quick overview and then open for questions. Sorry, Tony. You after me? Okay. So this is an opportunity to build upon the economic growth strategy and action plan that we've had supported and we've been working against for some time, as well as the pathway to recovery plan, which is in response to the transition from both a direct response to COVID, but also transition to recovery. What's become clear is that we are doing a good job of liaising with our businesses, both large and small, but what we don't necessarily have is a way in which we can assimilate that information into practical snippets of knowledge that can inform policy, projects and programmes. So what this has done is has kind of coordinated that into a sensible structure so that we can make sure that where there are business needs that become apparent because many businesses are suffering from a particular issue, we can make sure that we can present that in the right and appropriate way through the various bodies, through, for example, the Town Deal Board and the committee structure that we have here at the Council, to actually enact change and report on some of the impacts that businesses are facing. So the paper pulls that together. As you can see in the very first paragraph, it talks about the way in which we can influence policy and strategic decision making. We can also ensure that we identify new opportunities, either put forward by a business themselves or through enterprise policy programs that come out at central government level, or signposting and facilitating new funding programs that are announced from bodies such as the LEP or the Chamber. And finally, to identify any gaps that we may not have known about, but businesses have identified. If you go through to paragraph 1.3, you can see that this is something that the Economic Growth Strategy and Action Plan has prioritised through our Enterprise GY service, and that's something we've been delivering for some time. The intention is that this business engagement will be focused on 4 core themes. That would be through direct business engagement, through one-to-ones, events, things that we're already doing, such as the Leaders' Reception, Spirit of Enterprise, and so on. We'll do it through membership-led bodies, such as the GY Tabia, the BID, the Business Improvement Districts, the Chambers, and Federation of Small Business. There's also the wider networks that we want to build upon. We do that at both an officer and political level through things such as the LEP, the All Energy Industry Council, and there are others that we can pick up as resource allows. In terms of what we want to facilitate and report back on, we want to use a growth group, an economic growth group, hopefully chaired by a business representative body such as the Chamber of Commerce or the Federation of Small Business. That would be decided at the first meeting and through the terms of reference. But the intention is that is business-led, so that those discussions and the information that we're assimilating can be brought forward at a political level, such as the Town Deal Board or the committees that we've mentioned earlier. So as you'll see in the annex, you've got much more detail as to the objectives of each of those core focuses of work and what we want to achieve in terms of the outcomes. So this is an opportunity for you to consider what we're putting forward and comment on the focus that we want to deliver over the next 2 to 3 years. And I think at that point I'll pass to questions.
Okay, I have Tony first and then Bob, Councillor Price.
Thanks very much, Chairman and Michelle. Once again, I mean, it's obviously a very good report, but I think it's a case of being here, done that, got the T-shirt. I mean, we organised an organisation called Jimmy, which is much before many people in this room's office, and perhaps David can probably remember that and 1 or 2 of the councillors. And that was an excellent organisation which did exactly this. And I think when the council decided in its wisdom to do away with Jimmy, part its way, we warned at that time, and I wasn't on the council, I know the Labour group warned at that time that that's going to leave a hole in what we've got. So it's nice to see that we were proven correct and that this is quite clearly a report which really exonerates us in terms of our support for an organisation that's needed to have that connectivity in Great Yarmouth, because there is a clear need to establish and sustain an interface between the council and local businesses. We've always agreed that, and I think it's very sad that we've lost a number of years in which we've been really in this impasse as far as the organisation is concerned. So as far as this is concerned, I think, you know, as far as we're concerned as a Labour group, we'll clearly support this because this falls in line with what our policy has been for a number of years, and it just saddens me that we've lost a number of years in this lost communication effort that we had in putting us forward. And I have to say, it was fairly groundbreaking when we actually initiated this back in the 90s. And there were very few organisations, councils across the country that were doing a similar thing where it was business-led, but it was a joint organisation with 5 strands, including the Chamber of Commerce, the Borough Council, port users, the Great Yarmouth Port Authority, and others. And And, you know, as I said, this is something that we've needed for a long time. So I'm pleased that now common sense has prevailed, and congratulations on a good report, Michelle. And I'm just glad that we're now getting back on track, albeit a few years a bit late. The other comments I'd like to make is in relation to the Chamber of Commerce. I've been a representative on there from the Labour Group for 2 years. I've yet to be asked to come to a meeting. So I'm very concerned about what their initiatives are for Great Yarmouth. I know at that time we had an old Great Yarmouth Chamber, and I know it's sort of contracted in, but it just serves the point what, if we're going to have this dialogue, then if we've got an organisation where we can actually meet, which presumably is the Chamber, and I know Graham is on there and I'm on there, but I certainly have not been invited to one meeting in 2 years. So it does beg the question about the priority, about what the point of this is. But at the end of the day, I think overall, as I said, this is turning the clock back to what we've had before, which is something that we never wanted to depart from, and I'm sure that my members on the Labour Group will welcome this initiative to say, well, you know, let's go forward and try and pick up from where we left off.
Well, thank you, Tony. As you know, I got rid of Jimmy because it was the Great Yarmouth Marketing Initiative. It was 20 years old and it was no longer an initiative. But also, we moved on from that. We had the enterprise building up on the Conge that was using grant monies to do the business engagement. And it was also making sure that businesses could start up new, and we had an incubator cell there as well. But times have changed, and as you say, things move on. I'm not arguing with you. I think it's right that we now go back and have a look at to see what connections we can redevelop. And this document is an excellent start to that. So I thank the officers for that. Bob, you want to say something? Councillor Price?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Could I first of all say how I agree with Councillor Wright. I think his comments about the report are very sound. I would like to congratulate the officers who did it, because reading this again today in detail, I thought it was actually an excellent report, and I would like to congratulate on them. I do agree with Councillor Wright as well, because he's far more experienced in a lot of the ways of the borough, but I personally have worked with him in a previous life, not in Great Yarmouth, but on a national basis, and I know he's coming from the right angle with what he says. And anything that can bring prosperity and regenerate this town will get my vote. There is a lot of talent in Great Yarmouth, and it may be a one-man band, it may be a small to medium enterprise, or it may be a larger operation like Peels Port or the wind farm industry. They can all contribute to this town, and one of the things that I would ask our officers who've prepared this report, and it is a difficult task, I guess, because looking through, they have tried to cover every angle of getting everybody together to talk. But I know there are other people who will feel probably the same way as I do. It's going to be a difficult procedure to try and involve a lot of those small medium enterprises who do not have a representative body either in the holiday trade or in the construction industry, because not many of them, you believe it or not, are members of, say, something like the Small Business Enterprises or the Federation of Small Businesses. And one thing I would ask, if possible, if there is a way that we as a borough could facilitate an organisation or a media project where we can get those people involved and get their views, because they're the ones who are on the ground. They're the ones who are at the sharp end picking up the views and can help. And I do appreciate the fact that we are looking at people like Peels Ports, the wind farm, but they're on a slightly different level, and that is valuable, as is the one-man band enterprise. And if there is any way possible they can take that on board, I personally would appreciate it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Those are points well made, and it is a supply chain in Yarmouth that will feed the bigger industries that we need to be looking at as well. I just looking at page 15 under 7, next steps, and it's got a little box there with various companies and names in there. One of them is NWES. And I'm not sure if officers are aware, but NWES is having a little spot of bother over in the west, and it's one of those companies that we didn't have in Yarmouth for a long time because they caused us problems in Great Yarmouth as well. So I'd like to see NWES taken off that list if possible, just for the fact that at the moment they are not a viable proposition for businesses in this area. I'm quite happy with everything else that's in there. They are the ones that we need to be talking to. But I'm looking down at item 9 as well with the risk implications. And this paragraph is absolutely the issue that we have right at this moment in time. The biggest risk at present is the impact of the pandemic on the local economy. And I'm hearing that from people wanting to find chefs. There's no chefs about. They wanted to find waiters and all that kind of business. A lot of it is about people still on furlough and people coming off furlough. And there's a myriad of reasons as to why this is, but I think we need to sort of drill down and make sure that we can find some kind of clear path for them back to work.
Would it be okay for me to respond to that? Graham, is that okay?
Sorry, Michelle.
No, I was just going to respond. So just in terms of your comments, it is absolutely the bread and butter of Great Yarmouth, and we're working really hard to try and support the one-man bands and the SMEs, using the Federation Small Business as a conduit. But actually, the business advisory team have been working with these people who have been receiving grants from by the discretionary grants, the national grants, or the additional restrictions grants, as a number of members are aware of. So we do have a real bank of intelligence as to who these individuals are, often very small, serving the hospitality trade. So we're building that picture as we speak. We'll never get everybody, but we are trying hard to do so. So hopefully that does respond to your inquiry.
Thank you. Trevor?
Yeah, I'd like to, as I say, agree with what Councillor Wright said about the initiative from some years ago, but obviously this is a good report, which I welcome. You know, it's interesting to hear that, you know, there's a lack of chefs and bar staff and that. One of the reasons there is Brexit, and it's no good messing about and pretending it doesn't exist, because that is exactly what exists. And you've got Wetherspoon's boss asked for special exemptions so he can get Europeans over here to work. But I think Brexit has got a lot to do with the shortages. But just going back to what Michelle just said, I just wondered, and you know, we have got an enormous amount of information now that we didn't have, purely because of the grants. And I know Tory's been involved in administering those grants at quite a high level. But I just wondered what you're going to do with all this information, because there are hundreds of businesses, small businesses, one-man bands, and, you know, they're busy people. You know, that's the idea. You know, they're sort of one-man bands. So it's a great idea. I'm just wondering how you're going to involve them in how you're going to do it. I mean, we've already got the bid. We've got the Great Yarmouth bid, which obviously involves a huge amount of businesses. We've got the town centre bid, which involves a huge amount of businesses. So, but you know, with the bid, when they took a vast swathe out of the rateable value businesses that had to pay into it, obviously that was done to make sure they won the bid. But I just wondered how you're going to do it. It's a great idea, but you know, we have the town centre board, and some of the biggest players in Yarmouth who are members of that board have never turned up for one meeting, not one meeting. So it's good luck, but I'm just wondering how you're going to do it.
The purpose of this paper and the business engagement plan isn't to replicate what's already being done. Certainly that would not be a good use of resources. I think what we are trying to do is ensure that the information and the messaging that we're giving to business is relevant to them. So, for example, we wouldn't communicate with all of those businesses for every single piece of information we have. It would need to be relevant. So it might be funding related. It could be related to an awards. It could be specific to a sectoral piece of information or policy change. And so we would... And as I didn't dwell on that in the paper, but we're building our customer relationship management system so that we can make sure that we filter this type of information and make it relevant to those businesses. So it would be at more that level than perhaps replicating a body that would act as that conduit. So I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Chairman. Excellent report by officers. I'm really in favour of this engagement plan. I acknowledge what Councillor Wright says, and I do believe where it's relevant, we should look to the past, but I'm more interested in making proactive steps forward for businesses in the town. So I think this is a great response to the COVID-19 recovery, and I think it's a very proactive first step to having better engagement with not only bigger businesses, but local grassroots businesses as well. So I'm in full support of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Looking at the paper, we've had the next steps, and they're on page 15, and the conclusion as well is pretty good as well as laid out in the paper. A clear need to establish and sustain an interface between the council and local businesses. I think that's a good basis to start from. And 10.3 on page 16, it says this paper presents, it says to officers, but I think that's to members, an overview of an introduction to a business engagement plan. Moving on from this, Michelle, what are the next steps for you, for the officers?
Assuming that members continue to allow us to roll this out, it would be a case of putting together that business-led representative group to start the ball rolling in terms of bringing that information and understanding what that might mean for new projects and programmes. At the moment, we're focused on the Community Renewal Fund bid that we've submitted, so any outcome of that, we would want to start engaging with businesses to make sure that they're brought up to speed and as engaged as possible. And then even in the longer term, working up UK Shared Prosperity Fund applications and or the Levelling Up Fund, and using that group as a conduit to understand what businesses want and need. And assuming we do pull something together, we would of course bring it back to members at an appropriate point in the future.
Thank you. Are we aware of what the unemployment rate is in Great Yarmouth at the moment? Do we have any figures on that at all, do we know?
I don't have that data to hand, but we can certainly get that quite easily. I know Simon Best, who's our regen manager, would have that very quickly, so I can circulate that after this meeting if that's useful.
No, that's just be useful to understand how many people are out of work in Great Yarmouth and how many we could use to fill some of the jobs that are being identified. Thank you. Members have no more comments to make? There isn't a recommendation apart from taking the. Sorry, just trying to get to the front of it. Review and comment upon the content of the report. I think we've done that. I think we just need officers now to go off and continue their work, put that group together, and bring it back to the economic development so that we know what's going on and who's getting involved. I think that's important as well, just so that we know who's taking up the cudgel, if you like, and moving forward with it. Okay, thank you, officers. Good report. Moving on with the agenda, we have the Kickstart programme on page 23. And this is Victoria.
Hi, evening all. This paper follows a paper that was delivered in October to the Economic Development meeting, where members discussed at length the option of GYBC becoming a gateway to promote the Kickstart scheme into our area, or actually to be a gateway, so facilitate each and every placement, or to actually promote the gateways that were set up ready to run within our area. It was agreed that we would act to promote Kickstart into the 3 gateways covering our area, which were East Coast College, Norfolk Chamber and Norfolk County Council. The activities can be found within the paper. Norfolk has achieved a good level of interest since submission of this paper. We've managed to obtain figures of approved placements since the launch, but I would like to point out that these figures have been given by the individual gateways themselves. figures available are not available directly from the gateway as yet, because that is not, none of the information has been made public, and until they have done that, they will not allow us to have those figures. But we are there. As soon as they can give us those numbers, they will do. So Norfolk Chamber of Commerce have currently had 423 approved placements. Norfolk County Council 210, East Coast College 108 approved placements, and the University of East Anglia have got circa 100 placements which have gone through. Confirmation from the key gateway bodies indicates that Great Yarmouth has around 120 approved placements, with 67 of these placements being live across 61 businesses currently in our area. Placements are currently taking up to 4 months to process. In some cases, this is taking longer. I have spoken with Gateway Services. They are well aware that it is their processing and not the gateways, so not the Chamber, not Norfolk County Council. It is actually from their end, and they'll hold their hands up, very honest about that. And we've also been recognised that our circa 50% conversion rate is a good achievement for across the county. There are frustrating delays. There are waiting on the delays, but we hope to see that these become very quick to get into placements or actually into businesses.
Got it? Yep.
That's it.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was made aware that the DWP are taking an awful lot of time trying to deal with this, but I also understand they've taken on new staff to pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. The new staff have been taken on. So new staff have been taken on by the DWP, but one of the biggest issues they've had is gateways were put in place to fulfill business placements that couldn't hit that 30 vacancy limit. So a business that couldn't give 30 placements would go through a gateway. Once that was all set up and people had put costly resources in place, the DWP then took that away. So businesses with just looking to offer one placement can go directly through to the Kickstart systems with the DWP. Well, you can imagine the sheer volume of administration that has caused them. We have 6 placements going through ourselves here for the council, and that is still taking some time to go through.
Can I just ask as well, my understanding from the Kickstart application is, yes, the gateways are doing the paperwork, if you like, but then it's up to the individual to do something further, and that's where the breakdown in communication is starting.
That's exactly it. The businesses will make the application, and then they're actually relying on the individuals who are wanting to take those placements, so maybe 16, 17-year-olds, to make that initial contact, which it is proving quite difficult. So I think there needs to be, I was actually in discussions last week with Gateway, that maybe they'll put some sort of support system in place to try and ease that transition and make it smoother for both the businesses and the applicants.
That's what the County Council is doing. It's trying to be that gateway between Gateway and the employer, which is an issue at the moment.
And this is exactly why the gateways were put in to do that.
Well, they've got the capacity to do it. We would never have had the capacity at Yarmouth to do it, but the county is making those. The thing is that they first had to identify why things were suddenly stopping, and then they realised that the applicant had to actually go to the employer with his gateway paper or whatever he's got to do and talk to the employer.
Absolutely.
And no 16, 17-year-old feels confident enough to do that, as far as
it's very difficult, especially when some of them, this is their first experience into employment.
Yeah.
So there's a slight sort of kink in the chain.
It is, but it's an identified
Absolutely.
chink, and it's being
100%.
dealt with. Okay. Any members got any comments on the Trevor? And Tony? I can't hear you, Trevor.
I can't hear, sorry.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I think it says somewhere that the grant is £1,500 that's paid to a business. to actually, I believe that's gone up to 3,000 now.
Well, it's. I don't think that's been completely signed off, but I will check.
My question really is obviously these figures, and if the DWP are behind, I mean, perhaps they shouldn't have launched the thing so quick. But we're talking about 800 placements, 800 gateway applications. That's in Norfolk.
Yes.
Now, I don't know how many 16 to 18-year-olds on universal credit are in Norfolk. I should imagine it's thousands, tens of thousands probably. So it seems a very low figure. But my question is, how much money is there? I mean, I know it's £1,500 at the moment, but if it goes up to 3,000, perhaps the chairman would know, how much money is available for the scheme? Because quite clearly, if there's a real big push for it, and loads of people come forward, how much money is there? How much money is available? Is the money going to run out? Is it for 1 year? Is it 6 months? Is it for 2 years? No, we're talking about the money.
Yeah, no. In 1.1, it says a kickstart scheme is a national government £2 billion scheme.
Yeah, but how long does that last? Till it runs out?
Well, it says to create hundreds of thousands of high-quality 6-month work placements for young people aged 16 to 24 who are claiming universal credit. So that's how much it is, that's how long it's for, and the people who can apply for it are the 16 to 24-year-olds.
It sounds a lot of money, but over the country, it's not a lot of money. So I'm just wondering, how long that money is for.
I'd need to calculate, Trevor, how many 1,500 quid's going to 2 billion. I haven't got that calculator.
Well, it could be 3,000.
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, perhaps somebody
Victoria.
could. I mean, and it would be also useful to know, as the chairman said, the unemployment figures for this tranche of people in Yarmouth, how many it would, bring into the net. Because I know my son's got a small business. He's signed up through, I don't know what gateway he's signed up through. He's had one application, one. So I don't quite know how it all feeds in together. I mean, we've got all these gateways. Do they talk to each other? Does it go to a central database? How does it work? I mean...
Gateways are in discussion, and we have East Coast College that actually supplies the wraparound training for, so that £1,500 is used for wraparound training.
No, I understand all that. But I'm just wondering how the gateways work. I mean, we've got all these, we've got Norfolk Chamber of Commerce, Norfolk County Council. Do they talk to each other? Because people are applying through different gateways.
No, they do, Trevor. Yeah, they talk to the gateway. Whichever gateway they apply to, that is their contact.
Yeah, but do the gateways talk to another gateway?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do?
They meet regularly, and if a gateway has taken on, if you were to go and register through a gateway, you couldn't then register through another one.
No, I understand.
It's sort of very funneled, but they do discuss, they discuss at length. They meet quite regularly. The actual pound per head value is circa £8,000 per placement, and that includes the covering of the wages.
Yeah, I know that all works. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and the other thing is, obviously we've got East Coast College, who are a gateway. What about the FE College? How do they fit into all this? Because, sorry, is that all part of East Coast now? Is it? I don't know.
No, the gateway actually have to apply to be a gateway. So if the FE haven't applied to be a gateway, then there wouldn't be a gateway.
No, I know that, but I'm saying we've got 2 colleges in Yarmouth. Are they both East Coast colleges? No. So how does the sixth form feed into it? Well, they don't. I don't know.
And in 1.3, the programme details explains how the scheme works and how much money is available to each employer.
Oh no, I read that. It says 1,500, but the government keeps spouting at the moment it's 3,000.
Well, it says the £1,500 grant is paid to the employer per employee, but at the beginning it says government provides a wage subsidy to cover national minimum wage and national insurance for a minimum of 25 hours a week for 6 months, which is around 6,500 for the 6 months. So there's more than just the 1,500.
No, I understand. I've read that. I understand it. What I'm saying is the government said 2 weeks ago, and they announced, I think it was launched 2 Mondays ago, that basically that 1,500 that is given to the business, not the wages that are being paid, was going up to 3,000.
Yep.
But what you're saying is that that's the launch that the government minister was sitting on. I think it was a small business minister, was saying, yeah, it's gone up to 3,000. So what you're saying is it hasn't gone up to 3,000, still 1,500 because it's not been signed off. Yet the minister told national TV that it was 3,000.
He said it was going up to 3,000, yeah.
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 Well, has it? That's what I'm saying, has it?
Yeah, well, at the moment it hasn't, but
No.
it
So
will
the
do.
small business minister didn't... Yeah.
Councillor Ackenback? Tony can come after you, that's fine.
So thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I was going to say, similar to what's already been said, certainly in my experience, we've had, it's worked really well and extremely easy as a business to get the paperwork through to the gateway and get that sent forward. That was done in under an hour. That was not an issue at all. Once the difficulty is that the DWP has now said that businesses can't advertise roles; they can only be advertised through the job centre. So I know that caught various businesses out. We hadn't advertised ours, but I know that that's been an issue. So you can't advertise. But what the work coaches are doing they are referring relevant claimants to particular roles. So we had close to 20 referrals. So I would get an email saying, we have suggested this person applies for your job. But then, as has been mentioned, the young people themselves then have to take that initiative and apply. And certainly in my experience, we're on a 25% return. So of the number that of referrals we're getting, only 25% are then actually applying. Being as my business is based around young people and supporting young people, we couldn't be more open and kind of able to do that. So I think that in my experience is where the real barrier is, and whether there's something that as a borough council we can do alongside what else is being done to actually support young people and promote Kickstarter, not to the businesses as such, because as Trevor said, his son's waiting for people, we're waiting for our second Kickstarter now, but actually to promote to the young people how to do that and how simply they can apply and how actually to get them in having that confidence after being, locked down for so long and, perhaps other social anxiety issues and things that have been exacerbated massively over the last year, that maybe that's where our investment in time could be in supporting the young people to apply. As I say, for a business, from the business side, in my experience, that's not been an issue at all. The issue is getting the young people to be able to come forward. I don't know if there's any plans to kind of look at that side alongside what the DWP are doing.
Again, I'm just wondering, it's one of those things that businesses need to be telling gateway operators that there's an issue in that area. Does that happen? I don't know.
The gateways don't have anything to do with the young people applying at all. The gateway simply gets your role to the job centre. From there on in, it's nothing to do with the gateway. It's the young person and the DWP working together. The gateway merely opens the door for the business, and once you're through, that's their kind of role done to a degree. And that, like I say, that's the part where I found it's not an issue. The issue is the young people having the confidence and ability to come forward for those roles.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the officers in Gateway are helping businesses, but they're not helping the kids apply?
Yeah, but that's not the role of the Gateway. The role of the Gateway is purely for the business side. They are purely to engage businesses in the programme. And they get your advert to the job centre, and from there on in, it's for the young people to apply for the jobs. The Gateway once your gateway is just a way to get your job to the DWP, your role to the DWP, and the gateway has nothing to do with that. It can support you in organising training and all those things once you've got your person in place, but they have nothing to do with actually getting your young person into that role.
So Kickstart is putting what I'm understanding and what I've always understood is that the businesses apply to Gateway to say that they've got a vacancy and what that vacancy is, and then it goes to the Kickstart, and where does it go from there? How do the people know about it?
It goes to the DWP, and they advertise it through the job centres.
The DWP put it to the people who are on the register of Universal Credit or at risk of being long-term unemployed.
Yeah, so it'll come through to their work coaches, and the work coaches will then talk to their individual young people and say, I've got these 6 roles, do you like any sound of any of these? Is this something you're interested in? Have you thought about applying for this one?
Okay. So sorry, I don't want to labour this a little bit, but is there something missing there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I think
something
is
where the
missing
kids
is
need to have the
young
heads up as to what's happening.
Yeah, that is what's happening and it's working, but the young people then aren't having the confidence or the support or whatever it is to apply. Like I say, we had 20 referred to us.
No, I am hearing that at county as well, so I know it's being picked up by the children's services and by others as well, but I think there's got to be a link into how they can apply what they know to the people who need to apply for the job and how they then apply for the job, and I think children's services are picking that up.
Yeah, I mean, every job can have a different application. You know, for our role, they simply just had to send me a CV. That's all I wanted. I made it as easy as humanly possible. It was just send me a CV.
No, I appreciate that, but it's the county's role to look after their 16 to 24-year-olds, so I'm assuming that they are picking it up. Victoria?
I think what we need to kind of encourage and support that gap between making the 16 to 24-year-olds aware of those relevant jobs that are out there, to help support them through that journey whilst they're in, even if it's a support for a 4-week basis. So from writing CV to application to interview techniques to actually going, because I think there's a lot of that are holding people back. We as a gateway support, and on behalf of the gateways, they are there to promote and to get the businesses in, not to support the younger applicants. But I do think, and I'm from the conversations I've had with Kickstart, I think they are well aware of that maybe there needs to be a process within the DWP for those that are on universal credits to support them through that initial journey to then the taking over by the employer, to then complete that work placement.
Well, as we've identified, there's a link issue here. Can we take that back to Kickstart?
I have taken it back to Kickstart, and it's not something. I took it to the district account manager at Kickstart. It wasn't new information to them. It is information that they are trying to put a process in place to support.
Well, I'll start something at County Hall then, just to see if there's a way that the children's services and the economic development can work together to make sure that these people have a joint, get some support into getting into Kickstarts, basically. I think that's what we're talking about. I'm seeing a hand up. Whose hand is that? Councillor Claire Talbot? Yep.
Sorry, I think Councillor Wright was before me.
Was he? Sorry, Tony.
That's okay, Chairman. I've got 2 or 3 points to make. The first question I have is in relation to the 4 gateway providers. Is there a breakdown of where our placements come from? In other words, do Norfolk Chamber of Commerce provide 20 or 30, Norfolk County Council, or do they all come from East Coast College? Have we got a breakdown?
We the details that we've got in the report are what we have to date. We're waiting on those actual figures being confirmed, so we know what the placements are for the gateways as a whole. But we are looking. We do get those numbers through.
And we'll know the companies as well, where they're, or the businesses or charities where they're going. No, we wouldn't know that.
They won't allow us to have that information.
They won't let us.
No, which is it's very difficult, because then we can't then contact those businesses, and it's all to do with GDPR, to then offer that additional support.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Sorry, I would like to then see with the Kickstart placements is then to the businesses that have taken on a placement to then encourage the apprenticeship. So what is that next support for that individual and that business?
Yeah, I mean that clearly is a flaw in the system, because I think my concern is really the fact is that this is a 6-month placement and it's supposed to give them the skills to go into the job market. But if other people don't know about these youngsters, to leave them to the initiative for them to actually chase it up is sometimes quite onerous and very, very difficult. And I'm sure that some of the employers may well decide to keep some of these people on. They may well decide to put them into apprenticeships, because quite clearly it says right in the preamble that this is for high quality jobs.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this is going to be the case there. So I'm very surprised that, you know, we can't sort of chase this element up. But the other concern that I have is, I don't know whether councillors have read it, but we were all circulated a report from the Local Government Association called the Prosperity Report. And it's a very, very big document. And what it does, it breaks down by constituency all of the statistics about what is actually happening within your area. And tragically, I think Yarmouth is 370th out of 376 local authorities in prosperity in the country. But worse than that is that in terms of adult skills, we are 376th out of 376. And education, I think it's a report that all councillors should actually read, because it makes quite horrific reading in terms of where we actually are in terms of the rest of the country. Now, we all know that Yarmouth has suffered from high unemployment, and the highest unemployment in East Anglia for a number of years. That has always been historical, and I think most coastal areas suffer from exactly the same thing, but we suffer more than most. And when we get schemes such as Kickstart, I'd much rather see something which is more local to us, because our difficulties cannot be compared with difficulties in a place like Brentwood, for instance, in East Anglia, which is about 10th on the prosperity list. And so you can't compare, and it's the same comparing us with the rest of Norfolk. We've got different difficulties. So I think where there's flaws there, one, we can't chase up where these people are actually working to try to give them the support. And secondly, there's quite clearly a difficulty, because as Trevor said, when his son has joined this, he's got one application for this. We need to be able to chase this up, because I think, you know, this league table, and I encourage members to actually read the Prosperity Report, and it covers every single constituency, and I've got Yarmouth's here, and it covers everything from education to the environment to housing to skills to wages and everything. And I think that's an indictment on us in Yarmouth, that we are at the bottom of the league in terms of prosperity, or near the bottom of the league in Prosperity Report, and in skills in particular, which is what I'm concerned about. I think that's something really needs to happen bigger than that, because we've got over 100 out of the, as Trevor said, of 800 on this gateway, which breaks down 100 per constituency. But I think we need to have that extra help and extra support to try to encourage young people not only to get into the job market, to get skills, because clearly to be 376 out of 376 constituencies in adult skills is not a very good place to be.
Thank you, Tony. I don't disagree with you. It's been one of those things for the last 20 years that's been an issue in this town, is the level of deprivation and how we're going to turn it around. And I think officers from all denominations and from all across the East Anglia and the LEP have all worked at trying to solve the problem of why this skill shortage and the deprivation is in Great Yarmouth. And it's one of those things, not just in Great Yarmouth, but Kings Lynn, Thetford, Norwich are the most deprived areas in the east, along with Great Yarmouth. And trying to deal and sort out how that is been a conundrum for years, 20 years that I know of anyway. But we are working on it. I know about several, what are they called? Several initiatives across various departments and various elements of the LEP. They've got a skills element. We've got our place here, we're trying to improve skills in Great Yarmouth. We've got the county working on skills across the county as well. It is a real big issue, and I think that's my biggest disappointment is we need to pick this up at school level and have a curriculum that meets what's needed in the area. And as we've got such a broken curriculum system, are they teaching them what we need in this area, and are they getting it? I'm not seeing it, and I'd love to be able to do more about the curriculum, so that when they come out of school they can then go into further education and then go into whatever business it is they want to go into, because they've got the education to do it. But we're not seeing it in Great Yarmouth, Thetford, Kings Lynn, and some areas of Norwich as well, and it's been an issue for many years. Councillor Talbot.
Thank you, Chair. You've literally just said pretty much what it was I wanted to say, which is, are we able to work with the local education authority or contact the education minister even and suggest the fact that job skills is something we need in schools? Because looking back on my own education, I wasn't taught how to apply for jobs. I wasn't taught how to interview, and they're skills that you need to have. I cannot think of a single time when I've used Pythagoras' theorem, but I could have done with learning how to interview, learning how to even a proper handshake would have been a decent lesson. The other thing is, are we able now to look at the majority of these people targeted in the Kickstart programme are obviously they're all 16 to 24, so they're either fresh out of school, or they've been out of school a few years, or they're in college. Is there anything we can put into place now to teach them how to apply for jobs properly, how to write a CV, how to interview, or because they're out of the education system, is it too late to help them?
I never believe it's too late to help anybody. I always think there's something that can be done for everybody, but how we get that out there into the system, that's done through children's services at the moment, because they have a care and a responsibility to those children 16 to 24, and then once they reach 25 they then go into the adult social system, if you like. I think there's been an awful lot of conversations between colleges, schools and universities about how we deal with this problem, and I don't think anybody's come up with a solution yet, and that's a real shame for places like Great Yarmouth, where we desperately need that solution. We need to give the kids in Great Yarmouth and the youngsters the appetite for work, and also give them something to look forward to as well. You know, the opportunities. There's the biggest down for Great Yarmouth is we have hundreds of well-paid people drive down the Eccles Strait every day and do really good jobs in Great Yarmouth that are really well paid, and then they get in their cars and they drive back down the Eccles Strait. And the problem then is that they're not spending their money in Great Yarmouth, they're spending it somewhere else that they've earned in Great Yarmouth. So from that point of view, we have a long-standing issue in that respect, and I know we're talking to the colleges about it, what we can do about it, we're talking to the schools what we can do about it, but I'm not seeing any, how can I put it, solutions that are going to happen immediately. Councillor Walker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I don't know if there's any mileage in it, but years ago you used to have a skills night where people from the education service would go into schools and talk to school leavers about their aspirations. That might not be a bad thing today. At least that gives them some guidance as to where they could be pointed to get jobs. It always worked for our generation, so I can't see why it wouldn't work for this generation.
I totally agree with you. I think that would really help. I think the issue we have is that a lot of the schools are trusts now, and you can't actually access them without having an agreement with them. Whereas before, it was all belonged to us, didn't it? It was all county council schools, and you could just do what you liked, and you could form your own curriculum. So I'm not saying the trust system is the best in the world, because I think it's a broken system for Great Yarmouth. And I don't think it's helping our youngsters. But,
Could I say, Chairman, they did used to run nights since the academies have been in place at the old Marina Centre, where children of school leaving age, if they so wished, could go along and talk about their aspirations and what they would like to do for a living. There is no reason why this town hall couldn't be a venue for that very reason.
That's not a bad point. Could we have a jobs fair here? Is it something that this council could help with?
We do have a jobs fair here, and in the past that has been very successful. Kickstart was obviously launched during COVID, getting groups of people together to train them, help them, has obviously been very tricky for schools and colleges, but I couldn't agree more. Actually having somewhere within the job fairs and at the skills hubs in colleges and at schools would be an excellent place to promote this. We have to remember that Kickstart applicants have to be on universal credit. So would they be on that at that stage? But I think jobs fairs where we can try and encourage and work with the job centres to have it there, so that demographic that is on the universal credit, we can really kind of help, I think, and really encourage and support. And I think that's probably important. Those that have experience with Kickstart, I hope, would agree.
Okay. Perhaps it's something we can look at going forward. I think so. Yeah. Okay.
Chairman,
Tony.
Just very, very quickly. I think one of the problems, going back to the skills, and obviously what Colin said about the jobs fair, they were certainly useful in their day. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try that again, but obviously industry has changed in Yarmouth significantly over the last few years. But one of my concerns, and I think, well, I'd like to think the council would agree with this. I think some of the changes that have happened at the College of Further Education, when we became East Coast College, took away that locality. And I think one of the things that happened when the catering department moved to Lowestoft, I think that was a detrimental step in terms of Great Yarmouth. And I think we made that point forcibly, that wasn't a step that was welcomed by us. And it's unfortunate that we're in that position. I think we now find ourselves in a position, we're now paying the price for that, I think, within the, because you know, there's lots of adverts for people to work as chefs and so on and so forth within the catering industry. Now, part of that's because of the pandemic, I understand that, but we lost that connectivity there. And I think the same across the board in engineering and other aspects as well, because I was on the board when it was a Great Yarmouth College of Education and we were going through this transition, and it was because of the cuts to the further education budgets that forced them into the position where they had to amalgamate. And I think what we've seen here in Great Yarmouth, unfortunately, you know, as I pointed out, the skills gap that we face here, I don't think that we're being best served by this joint college. Now, I'm sure that the principal is excellent at his job and he does a fantastic job for us here. I think he'd probably disagree with that. But I know that a number of courses were cut. That gave opportunities to youngsters and older people alike to actually go in and try to reskill and everything else. And I think that is probably a cut that probably is going to have an effect more so in years to come. I think, you know, unfortunately, the only way to bridge skills gap is, one, to give people employment, and two, to give them the skills. And they can only get the skills if they go to a training centre, mainly in a college environment. So I think, tragically, that's where we are with that situation. And I think, you know, we are fighting this battle, and I would like to think that we're fighting it together because for the betterment of the town. But I do think that the change that we saw within the further education establishment, because of the significant cuts that were made at the time, I think that has added to our dilemma here in Yarmouth. And I hear what you say about the problems in Kings Lynn and Thetford and everywhere else. You know, of course I'm concerned about them, but I'm really concerned about Yarmouth. That to me is the number one, because we are, like I said, unfortunately at the bottom of that pile, and I want to see us lift ourselves up from that. How we do it, I'm hoping that through the officers, through some of these reports, we can actually get some action out of this, and hopefully we can move forward on that basis.
I have to totally agree with you there, Tony. There was nobody more upset than me when I saw the catering college move out of Great Yarmouth and go down south, and Trevor knows that as well, because that's where I trained. And I think in a town like Great Yarmouth, with the huge catering and tourism element of it, to move that catering college out of Great Yarmouth was an absolute disaster. Because not only did they support the people in Great Yarmouth, but anybody in the northern villages. It was a trip down to Yarmouth to train how to become a chef or a waiter or a housekeeper or whatever. But that's all gone now. It's all gone down to Suffolk. And we're told that Yarmouth can do what it likes to move down there, and we can send people down there. I don't know how that's working. It doesn't sound like it's working to me. But I'm not in the know. I don't know if people are actually going down there. Perhaps officers do. But what's happening to people now in Great Yarmouth who wants to become a chef, how they apply to South Norfolk College or how they get there every day, I really don't know. and I think that's a real issue. I've got Councillor Talbot and then Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what both of you just said. I did a different vocation. I trained as a hairdresser, and I did that at Yarmouth College. And when I heard that the Ambitions restaurant had closed, I was absolutely gutted, because we have so many restaurants in Great Yarmouth. We have so many hotels, and I've worked as a waitress in quite a few of them. And I've got to know quite a few chefs, one of them being Councillor Wainwright's son. And having so much talent come out of Yarmouth that has gone through Yarmouth College, that's now gone. And I don't know if there's a way we can petition the college to potentially consider reopening that, because they have left such a huge educational void within this town, and it's something we need, because there are so many kids that would love to train to be a chef, watching the likes of Gordon Ramsay and whoever else. They now don't have that opportunity, because getting over to Suffolk every day is quite a trek. It's not on your doorstep anymore. And I sit back and I look at that and I think, if they've taken Ambitions over to Lowestoft, how long is it going to be before they go, you don't actually need a hairdressing salon in Yarmouth College, do you? Let's move that over to Suffolk as well. Because the amount of hairdressers that come out of there every single year, again, is quite a few. And it just seems such a shame that we are being stripped bare of our educational resources.
Thank you. I must admit, when it moved down there, I was a bit disappointed. Then I learned that the trainee college over in the King's Lynn, West Norfolk, was moving to Peterborough. It wasn't just that I was thinking things are moving out of Yarmouth. It seemed to me that training colleges are moving out of Norfolk, and that is a real shame for me. And it always is. Trying to change it is another thing, but I totally agree with you, Councillor. It is a serious issue for Great Yarmouth. Councillor Price.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I echo your sentiments there, what you've just said. And you seem to be on the pulse there with reading people's minds at the minute. But going down memory lane, most of us here, I guess, with one or two exceptions, will remember what I call the proper colleges of further education. And whoever made the decisions now, we've got to live with, because we don't have plumbing and heating courses, we don't have bricklaying courses, we don't have woodwork courses, all of which came out of the college over at Southtown. Unfortunately, that's all gone now. Yes, they've taken the catering course, which was an ace thing for Great Yarmouth, especially being in this town. They're gone. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about them. The system that's coming in now reminds me very much of the old CITB scheme, if you remember that, the Construction Industry Training Board, where they would send their representatives around to companies, such as mine as I had in the day, and they would actually interface with you, and you had grants similar to these to take on lads, to take on, with the opportunity to give however many you could apprenticeships. Now, this seems to me to be a similar sort of thing, but it seems to be a bit more long-winded. Whereas they seem to cut out all the red tape in those days, and I guess I've got no influence, perhaps our officers have, in helping cut this red tape, which seems to be it. I also believe they've lost a market by restricting the people who can take the lads or lasses on, by saying they must be registered with Companies House. Forget the charity side, because that means you're having to go to limited companies. You can't go to good partnerships or sole traders. And there are a lot of sole traders in Great Yarmouth employing 10, 15 people who could take apprentices or young lads on. Now, that could be discussed with the powers that be, because that really is there. And one thing that, on a personal basis, when I see, and I don't know whether it's our words or the words from government, but when they say they're creating high quality jobs, that always rankles me, because the guy who used to dig a hole when I had a business was more important to me than the guy who was putting something in it. Because if the hole collapsed, the whole business went with it. And I do realise, I sometimes think the terminology is wrong, and I think the whole basis whilst it's right in concept, really needs fine-tuning to speed it up, to go to a slightly wider marketplace to get these children in. And because one of the things is I found as an employer that when these nervous kids came to me, within about 10 minutes, if you treat them right, they were brilliant. They came out of their shells, and I believe my colleague over there has got the right attitude, because when she's taken people, she's dealing with them properly. And the lads or lasses who come nervous are then opening up, and that is down to the people who are running the businesses. So my point is, Chairman, whilst we can live in the past where we had a better scheme, no doubt, we've got to move forward, improve this scheme, and get it so that we can help people in the future. Thank you, Chairman.
No, absolutely right. I can't argue a single word of that. And to be perfectly honest with you, you've just reminded me of something that where you're right. Everybody seems to be wanting to skill up and take up to a higher skill or a higher income base. But in Norfolk, we have £2.5 billion industry in tourism. We've got some billions of pounds of industry in the care markets, adult social care and the care markets. We've got industries in engineering that aren't as well paid, but you need them. You need brickies, you need plumbers, you need electricians, and yet everybody seems to be gearing up to try and get these high-paid jobs in flyaway places. And to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's I think we need to get a bit more down to basics and get people employed, get them trained up, get them employed, get them into work. If they've got a bigger ambition, then they can do that later on. But let's get them into work, give them a trade. I've got Councillor Hackenback and then Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say quickly, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding with the Kickstart scheme about the terminology high quality. They're not looking at particular jobs, it's that the placement is a high quality placement, meaning exactly what you've said, that they get the right support from the employer, that they're getting employability training, maths and English skills, that it's not just here's a bit of cheap labour for a business, but that it's not the job that's judged as high quality, it's the placement that the business is offering has got to be high quality. If that makes things any clearer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm probably the oldest trained member that was trained at the college. They didn't have an Ambitions restaurant when I was trained there. I qualified in 1970, so they were about to start building the restaurant. I have to say, I was sorry it went, as I know all of you were. It was a basis for a start of making a living. I wouldn't say catering back in the day was a good living, but we survived. I mean, today, top quality chefs, and I would not want to follow an example of the likes of Gordon Ramsay, and I wouldn't want my children to follow in that mode either. But having said that, there are placements for apprentices. As well you know, Graham, we have, as a team at Norfolk County Council, worked solidly to get placements for apprentices, where they would be paid an income, not a great income, but nevertheless they would have money at the end of the month, and at the end of it, they could come out with skills to the level of a degree that you get at university. Now, I don't think they're pushed hard enough. I don't know whether employers feel that, they want the responsibility of hiring that apprentice at the end of that term. But I still think it's a way forward. Apprenticeships in all skills, whether it's catering, plumbing, building, high-tech, I don't care what it is. But equally, I think we need to know there's a market out there for people with learning disabilities to do that apprenticeship also. They're not the forgotten ones. They are the ones that we need to nurture, because when it comes to IT, I can tell you some of the autistic children I've met are better at it than the experts I deal with. So, there is scope out there, and I think you're right, Graham. I think we need to look at the bigger picture and not just put us all into this little box that you open occasionally and just pull out ideas. I think we've got to really push to get our young people skilled. Thank you.
Councillor Camden?
Yeah, I'll just be quick, Chair, because I don't want to repeat what's been said. I've just got a couple of practical questions. First of all, on the so when someone, a young person who is on universal credit, is it mandatory for them to have to approach the employer?
No.
No. Okay. So the sort of options that...
Sorry, I may be misunderstood. It's not mandatory for them to take up a placement that is available. They have to contact the employer themselves.
Right. Okay. So the options available then are obviously either they enforce it or make it more mandatory for them to liaise with the employer themselves through fear of sanctions, or they go for the more beneficial approach, which is, to my more liking, is to offer a supportive arm around the shoulder, and hopefully that is going to be what's going to be provided. Because I was glad when I saw the number of placements which were available, but I'm disappointed on what I would call bums on seats. And, you know, I really hope, especially from hearing from Kathy, you know, businesses should not be waiting this long. And my final question, just so I'm aware, so like Councillor Wainwright said, it's gone up to £3,000. Am I right in saying that the employer at first receives £1,500, is it, in set-up costs?
I can't confirm that £3,000 because I haven't had anything official about it going up to that.
Okay.
So I wouldn't like to confirm. That £1,500 is for equipment.
Yep, set-up costs, yeah.
For the equipment that is required. So that could be hardware, it could be health and safety. One of the questions that I have gone back and actually asked the Kickstart team is, out of said numbers of jobs that have been, I think, recorded and we've given as numbers here, how many are actually up on the walls at the DWP?
Yeah.
That's one of the questions that I've asked for, because I think it's, whilst job placements are available, how many of those are actually being viewed by the applicants that could take those?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, if I can just speak on what I perceive it, how it may run, is I think an employer gets the £1,500 in advance for set-up costs. And then up to 11 days afterwards, they receive the first wage for the apprentice. And then 30 days after that, they receive the next wage, and so on and so on. Now, you know, sorry if I'm wrong on that, but that's just how I perceive it. And my worry is that then payments will also be delayed with the delay in the application. So
we could actually, if you didn't mind, take a lead actually. And Kath has got a Kickstart placement.
Yep.
So probably best place to answer.
So in my experience, the £1,500 doesn't come until you've completed all the paperwork to say the person's actually employed. So they've actually started work.
Yeah.
They're in work. So in my case, that meant having to provide PPE and things in advance.
Yeah.
So that comes out of business funds before it's obviously going to be them. The £1,500 did come very quickly, but it gets paid to the gateway, and the gateway then pay it to the business. So there can be a delay there.
From the HMRC?
From HMRC. But as in terms of wages, business has to pay, originally it was going to be pay all 6 months and the money comes in at the end of the 6 months, but that has now changed. But it's not until each month you pay wages, and then 11 to 30 days after that you'll get the money. I'm still waiting.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know I'm not normally on this committee, but, you know, I completely agree with the Kickstart scheme. But like Councillor Price said, that's exactly right. When I left school in 1987, I went on a YTS scheme, and I was paid £27.50 a week to go on a 3-year apprenticeship at the Civil Engineering College in Kings Lynn, which is hanging on by a thread. Since that day, I've always been in employment, and I've paid my taxes and paid my way, and everything to me now seems as though it's so complicated. You know, when I left Lynn Grove in 1987, you know, a guy from the CITB sat with me. He followed me all the way through my 3 years at college. He was there, he guided me. I was getting paid. You know, I stayed at the Civil Engineering College for 3 years, you know, in accommodation. It was all paid for. An issue that I'm quite, you know, very passionate about, and I have said to the MP about it, because the system what was in place then for me and many of my friends who are still in employment in the construction industry, you know, that was vital, that training that we were given at that time, and a no-brainer. But to me now, that's all gone, that's all too complicated, that's too expensive, if you like. But as all these years have gone on, you know, I've paid back hundreds of times what they paid for me, and that was just a brilliant scheme. And employed or people got into employment like I did, and now, you know, run my own business. I just think everything now is too complicated, and if they got back to basics and went back to how it was then, especially in the construction industry, there wouldn't be a skill shortage in construction like there is now, which is in crisis.
Thank you. I think we'll draw this to a close now. I think we've run it around the houses, and we've had a really good talk over, and we can't go back 50 years. I mean, crikey. We're asked to review and comment on the progress of the Kickstart scheme and the agreed method of support via gateways. I think we've given officers an indication of our disappointment at it not being as quickly, as people not being able to access it as quickly as they ought to, and get the benefits from it as quickly as they ought to, and something needs to be done about that. I think we've all discussed what we think it should happen, but we know that there's mechanisms that need to be put in place to make it happen. So I hope you're going to go away with some clear ideas on what it is that we're looking for to make Kickstart a little bit better, for a better experience for the people who are getting it. And if the DWP still have issues in getting their paperwork done, can we find out a little bit quicker about that, so that if necessary we can G the MPs up to look at it?
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much. It says number 7 is any other business. I have no any other business. And exclusion of the public, we don't need that. So that brings the meeting to an end, and thank you everybody for your attention tonight. Thank you.
May I just ask that you stay seated until the live stream has finished, please?